The pansies are yellow and purple, crowded into a plastic pot. I don't know how they come to be at my back door until my neighbor Debbie finally confesses 2 days later. An early Mother's Day gift from me and Gracie, she calls from the driveway, stooping to pat my present-giving dog. I crank open my office window, surprised to discover that the air outside is suddenly warmer than the indoors. But Mother's Day isn't for weeks, I protest. Debbie throws up her hands, then snaps a leash onto Gracie, and the two of them make their way slowly out to the road, Gracie seeming to know intuitively that for this walk, she must resist the urge to pull. Turning back to my desk, I reread the lines by Clarissa Pinkola Estes that I've just copied into my notebook. Anything you do from the soulful self will help lighten the burdens of the world. Anything. You have no idea what the smallest word, the tiniest generosity can cause to be set in motion. Mend the part of the world that is within your reach. On this mild spring morning, the simple words strike me as a kind of touchstone, the very guidance I've been looking for. Here is an instruction I can take to heart. I've known for months now that the hardest part of letting go, at least for me, is not just about my grown children leaving home, emotional and momentous as that milestone will be. The real challenge is how to relinquish with serenity the role I've cherished for so long, to stop identifying myself so completely with motherhood, and to allow for a new, more mature self to be born. The other day, Jack and I were out in the woods throwing sticks for Gracie and marveling at her tireless capacity for chasing them down. It's her instinct, I said. She's programmed to fetch. What are you programmed for, Mom? Jack asked, joking with me. Nurturing, I said, without missing a beat. Well, you can nurture me for a little while longer, he said lightly, but then, I'll be gone. Yeah, I replied, I'm trying to prepare myself for that. And so I am. After years of striving, caring, trying so diligently to create a family life, to make a home, to tend our hearth, the end of all that labor is in plain sight. It's funny now to realize how I lived my life for so long and poured myself into the work of raising children without ever thinking much about where we were headed, even as my sons were growing up and changing before my eyes. But now, here we are, with one son about to graduate from high school and the other pushing hard against me, harder than I ever could have imagined. I must remind myself these days that life is what it is, wonderful and heartrending all at once, and that my two children are doing exactly what they should be doing, rebelling and leaving. Yet acceptance comes hard for me. What I aspire to doesn't seem like much, a peaceful heart, simple happiness. But lately I've felt unmoored, not sure if or how much I'm still needed. Mend the part of the world that is within your reach. I think about what this might mean. I'm so often tempted to cast a wide net, to get overly invested in my children's lives, in the way things ought to be, in my goals and their outcomes, that I end up not doing the small tasks right in front of me, really beautifully, joyfully, or well. Now life is shifting, and all I really need to do is welcome the change and shift along with it. How glad I would be to move through all these transitions and challenges with ease. Perhaps it really is as simple as those words, mend the part of the world within your reach. It's all I can hope to do anyway. An hour later, I look up from my desk to see Debbie and Gracie returning from their outing. I watch from the window as Debbie fills a water bowl for Gracie from the outdoor faucet. Then she bends on one knee by the pansies and plucks off a couple of limp blossoms. And that's when I understand that a partner has appeared in my life, a friend who seems to be pointing the way toward what's next. In the hectic, busy months before we moved into our house last fall, I often noticed the old woman who seemed to spend her days alone, trudging back and forth up and down our road. She moved slowly, leaning on a cane, stopping often to rest. She usually carried a shopping bag and wore layers of clothes, dark sunglasses, a hat pulled low, and an orange reflective vest. I wondered about her, but not much. Instead, I wrote her off in my mind as a bit of local color, a character, harmless, but none of my business. One day I looked out and saw that she had stepped into our yard and was deep in conversation with Gracie. After that, she always stopped, and Gracie began to wait for her. Our dog figured out right away that this kind visitor had time for her and treats in her pockets, and that she was always happy to play a game of fetch or two. Once we were finally living in our house, a visit and a dog biscuit for Gracie became part of the solitary walker's daily route. Pretty soon, she was leaving treats for me, too. A cheerful card, a bundle of pens and a rubber band, a magazine. We began to talk. And before long, I learned that everything I had assumed about my unusual neighbor was wrong. She's not old, for one. She's just 53. Nor was she wandering aimlessly up and down the road. She was walking to save her life. She's not a nut. In fact, I've begun to think she just might be an angel. 8 years ago, Debbie contracted E. coli from a cup of chili at a fast food restaurant. Misdiagnosed at the hospital, mistreated with the wrong drugs, she suffered excruciating pain for months and nearly died. In the last 8 years, 14 surgeries have removed much of her digestive system, and lots of other anatomy that the rest of us consider essential to life. Midway through this ordeal, she also lost a beloved younger sister who had flown in from California to be at her bedside, caught a mysterious infection at the hospital, and died in great pain 10 days later. Debbie wears an ostomy bag. She goes into the hospital for IV iron every few weeks, deals constantly with internal and external bleeding, cauterizations, blockages, and episodes of twisted bowel. Her wound will always be open, raw, and vulnerable, and she will always hurt. She doesn't dwell on what's wrong with her, however. Instead, she spends her days taking care of her neighbors. Debbie told me once that she realized sometime during the 4th or 5th month that she spent in the hospital that she had no control over the illness wreaking havoc in her body. The only thing she could control was her attitude about it. She could lie in her bed and feel sad and angry about what was happening to her, or she could start to joke with the nurses and try to charm smiles out of the surgeons who kept coming to take away more of her insides. After removing a piece of her small bowel a couple of years ago, her doctor warned her that if she wanted to survive, she would have to walk. So that's what she does. Debbie's health has improved dramatically in the months I've known her. When we first met, she was recovering from her most recent surgery. As always, after an operation, she'd forced herself to get out of bed, to fill a bag with carrots for the horses, and set out on her rounds. Sometimes, she told me later, she couldn't even make it to beyond the end of her own driveway. The days when she actually managed to deliver the carrots half a mile down the road, those were the good days. A couple of months ago, Debbie gathered her courage and asked me a favor. Could she come by and get Gracie to join her on her walks? At first, I couldn't quite believe what I was hearing. I could do this woman a kindness by allowing her to walk my dog? That seemed too good to be true. Dog guilt vanishing overnight, more exercise for my boundlessly enthusiastic border collie, more freedom for me? I accepted. So began a friendship that soon expanded to include us all, human and canine family members alike. Debbie and I began by exchanging dog news, but as I've gotten to know her better, I've come to see her as a kind of spiritual mentor. Her daily presence in my life is a reminder that the heart's transformation is arrived at not through the will, but through surrender.